on tomorrow at Emirates Airline Park. Your thinking behind that?
Well, Carl, I suppose two things. One is that both those replacements, or all three of those replacements, haven't played much rugby in the last sort of 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You look at a guy like Janko Swanepoel, he's probably played 10 minutes, then 12 minutes, I think then 15 minutes in the last 3 outings. So, he hasn't had a proper game, so he gets to start tonight. Via, again, same thing, hasn't had much game time, and Cornwall played 10 minutes last week. So, it's basically just making sure there's a bit of continuity. They know they know what the plan is. They know what we've been speaking about for the last couple of weeks, and it gives me an opportunity for them to get some game time as well.
And what are you expecting from Benetton tomorrow?
Yeah, Carl, I mean, the one thing I know, they haven't won for a while, or they haven't won, for a long time. But the reality is they're always there and thereabouts. You look at some of the results, they don't get put away. And I've got no doubt, I've got a couple of South African guys there that know the Bulls as well. A couple of guys who played at the Bulls. They got, Ace, who was here. They've got David's brother Richard, that's there, that was here. And as I said, I think they're one of those teams, they just don't go away. They stay in the fight for a long time. So, I'm not expecting anything different tomorrow afternoon.
And I presume we cannot expect anything much different from the Bulls also tomorrow afternoon.
Look, I think there'll be a couple of different things. I mean, you've got a guy like Johan Goosen playing 10. We know how good he is, and when he's on song, how what a difference he makes to our team. You saw what guys like Kanan and Kirtley have done in a short space of time when they've come back. So I'm hoping we'll get the same sort of energy and the same sort of skill level that I know that Johan can do. So. I mean, the forwards are settled. We've obviously got a new 10, but we've got Chris Smith on the bench who's played lots of rugby, and obviously he will give us some extra added value at the back end of the game.
My last question, I see Keegan Johannes is back as replacement at the URC. Is that a reward for his play, or is it just...
I think, Carl, exactly that. I think the one guy who definitely put his hand up in those 2 games that we played when we were away, they played Free State and Griffins, and he's by far the one guy, that stuck out. Or he's the one guy that stuck out by far, in terms of the fact that he, that he definitely showed that he can, that he's keen to get a chance in the higher team. So, I mean, it's a reward, but also, I mean, I've got guys like, today we got guys like Zach and Mornay playing together, and they've played a lot of rugby. When I say they've played a lot of time together, a lot of minutes together for us at training and on the field. So, I'm comfortable that we've got sort of a halfback pairing playing this afternoon that are experienced, and then a guy like Keegan comes in and he can also just, feel off and get all the energy and obviously all the experience from the guys who've played a lot of rugby in the URC.
Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Liesel?
Hello. Good morning, everybody. Morning, Jake.
Morning, Liesel.
Just in terms of, you mentioned Johan Goosen, just to elaborate on his role at 10, and
Yeah, well, Liesel, I mean, I signed him on a long-term contract. He's here till 2026. It hasn't, I mean, obviously through injury, he's been in and out. But I mean, part of my brief is to get him to play his best rugby. I've seen him playing in France. He was, I think, player of the tournament twice in the top 14. And so basically the bottom line is where we are now. He's come back from another injury, had a shoulder operation. He's had, some time under his belt. And I need to get him back to where I know that he can get to. Obviously, if he's playing his best rugby and he combines with guys like Kanan and Kirtley, and Emrose Papier, who's played really well last week as well, then all of a sudden you've got 4 Springboks in your back line. And that, I've said it many times, when you get that sort of experience, you get that caliber of player playing together, it gives you a chance in big games. So, there's an opportunity. He's back now, and I can't wait to see how he does tomorrow.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Liesel. Morgan?
Morning, thanks. Hi, Jake. Jake, with the experience that the South African teams have started picking up in France, unfortunately, the French is not a team that we play, in my opinion, regularly enough at the international stage. Do you think this will benefit the guys a little bit more going into the World Cup later in the year? Yes, there are quite a few guys that have played in France, but a lot of guys might not have had that experience had South Africa not had this opportunity to play in the Champions Cup or the Challenge Cup.
Yeah, look, I think Morgan, any guy who's gone to France sees the importance of rugby, sees the whole vibe. I mean, incredible, atmosphere at Toulouse for us when we got off the bus, walking through, thousands of people going into our change room. That's unique, It's not something you get in every rugby playing nation. So those little things I think will benefit players who've never been to France. I think, I can only speak for our group. When we stayed in Toulouse, I mean, everybody in the hotel, everyone in the town knew exactly who the Bulls were, who we were playing against, fanatical about their Toulouse team, knew their Toulouse team backwards, knew every player, knew who was going to be on the bench. So I think, France, especially Toulouse as well, a bit like New Zealand, a bit like South Africa, where they're rugby crazy. And that obviously is a massive boost for guys. I mean, a guy like Kanan hasn't been to France to play rugby, so I'm sure he picked up something positive. But then, a lot of our players have played overseas and probably have played in France. I'm talking about the players that are going to play for South Africa. If you look at the makeup of our national team, whether it's Dwayne or Vincent Koch or, Trevor Nyankani, or the list goes on and on and on. They would have, if they'd not played in France, would have played in a championship where they would have played in France in the Heineken Cup, for argument's sake. So, yeah, and I think that is a massive bonus. I mean, having coached in France and having played with the Springbok side in France in a World Cup, any little thing you can get in France, any sort of added value you can get, Morgan, is a bonus. So, yeah, look, I've got no doubt that those little things will be beneficial to everyone who's experienced playing rugby in France.
And just lastly, Leo Cullen earlier in the week said, this South African team's involvement in the URC is something that, they quite like and enjoy, and he wants to see that relationship being built over decades. So it's a pretty good endorsement from a very good and astute coach about the value of South African teams in the competition.
Yeah, look, I've got no doubt that the four Irish sides, and in fact any of those sides in the URC have had to improve, because South African sides have done really well in this competition, and we've only been in it for 2 years. So, I'm sure, that the bonus is not only their side, it's our side as well. We get to play against those international players. When we play Leinster, basically you're playing against a fully fledged international team. When you play Scotland or when you play Edinburgh, the same. It's almost like you're playing the Scottish international team. So, look, Morgan, I've got no doubt that what he says is right. Let's not forget there's a massive amount of cross-pollinating that's happening anyway. You've got a Springbok assistant coach who comes from Ireland. You've got an assistant coach at the Sharks that comes from Ireland. You've got a conditioning coach at the Springbok comes from England. The list just goes on and on and on. So, I think it's not just the fact that we're playing. It's not just the fact that we're in that competition. I mean, there's a lot of cross-pollination that's happening. You got, I think aloud, you've got Franco Smith coaching in, head coach of a Scottish team. You've got so many South Africans and so many other nationalities interchanged in different coaching staff. So, yeah, as I say, I think he's right. I mean, there's no doubt that it's going to be a beneficial. I think it's definitely made the tournament stronger. I mean, the mere fact that 2 teams played in the final last year, 3 of them made the top 8 of that competition, shows that, obviously they've added value. But, it's obviously got to be, I suppose the one thing Leinster have shown, it's got to be continuous, and it can't be a one-off. It's got to make sure, like, as they've dominated it, we've got to get South African sides that can consistently compete in URC and in the Heineken Cup.
Thanks, Jack. All the best at the weekend games.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.